I'm gonna light my candle. Support local. My friend makes these. A portion goes to proceeds, and I love that my girl started her own candle company. I'll link it down below. What's up, you guys? Welcome to today's video. So, as you can tell by the title, we're gonna be doing a Q&A on what it was like giving birth in prison. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jess. I'm a recovering addict who served time in prison. I also gave birth in prison. I will link that in the description box down below. But today's video is going to be pretty lengthy, so let's just jump right into it. You guys asked me some of the best questions, things that I didn't even think about, but a lot of the questions are repetitive, which is good because it means that a lot of you are wondering the same things, and a lot of times I make videos and I forget important details or little details that would help the video make more sense. So, you know, I'm gonna try to start from the beginning here. There's so many questions. I know I'm not gonna be able to get to all of them, but I'm gonna try my best. Did the guards treat you better, worse, or the same? There were a lot of guards that were judgmental and crappy, and when I was first arrested pregnant in the county jail, there was a lot of shame thrown my way, if that makes sense. The nurse was really crappy to me and judged me, and justifiably so. I was an active user back then, and the situation was tough, you know? I came in with track marks, 95 pounds, and just a mess of a person because I was really a mess at that time in my life. I'm very fortunate that I was only like 3.5 weeks along when I was arrested, so Micah was born very healthy and everything was fine with her. But to answer that simply, most guards just kind of left me alone and treated me the same, but there were some guards that were really crappy. Do you still talk to the foster parents? How long was the recovery without meds? Yes, I still talk to the foster parents. They're absolutely incredible and I love them and such good people. I cannot speak highly enough of them. I think for me to be able to be, like, for bleeding to stop and my boobs to no longer produce milk without any kind of medication, it took my body weeks, like it usually does. The only reason why I know that my recovery was longer in prison is because I had a baby outside of prison. Riley was born after Micah. We have 2 daughters, Micah and Riley. So the recovery process was a lot shorter with Riley and a lot easier with Riley than it was Micah. So it took almost the full 6 weeks to heal, honestly. With Riley, I was like back to kind of my normal self within like 2.5, 3 weeks. I mean, I was still producing milk. I was breastfeeding Riley, but the recovery was so much easier with Riley, and I'll get into why later in the video. Did you know you were pregnant before you went to prison? Yes, because prison is after jail. When I got arrested, I had no idea that I was pregnant. You go to the county jail, you wait to get sentenced, and then you go to prison. I wasn't placed in prison until I was 6 months pregnant. So at the time of my arrest, October 20th of 2011 at 4:30 in the morning, I did not know I was pregnant, and I was in complete denial that I was pregnant for a long time after my arrest. Were you worried that you'd never see Micah again? Every single day after I accepted I was actually having a baby, once I, you know, sobered up a little bit and was able to cognitively understand what was going on, I was terrified for so many reasons. As the pregnancy progressed, I was so scared I would never see her again. It was a constant source of terror. That sounds dramatic, but I was terrified I would never see my daughter again. Terrified. I heard horror story after horror story in jail and then eventually in prison from women that had gone through something similar or had lost custody of their children, and I was terrified. I would listen to their stories in such grief and despair because I didn't know if I could get my daughter. I was terrified. I lived in a constant state of fear. I'm a social worker, interested to know how much you were encouraged to fight. It's such a good question. First of all, thank you for watching my channel as a social worker. I wasn't encouraged to fight. That fight came from inside of me. I met a lot of people throughout my time that told me that I would never get my daughter back. I was gonna lose. I needed to get over that. I needed to mourn that loss and move on. And that was something I refused to accept. Everyone told me I would fail. Caseworkers told me that I would fail. People that had gone through something similar told me I would fail. I was never encouraged to fight, but I used that negativity as fuel for that fire. I will get my daughter back. I will prove all of you wrong. I will go to the end of the earth to be able to have the chance to be her mother. So again, I just use that negativity as fuel. You're not gonna tell me what I can and can't do. I'm gonna do what you said I can't and prove you wrong. That's just the personality that I have. What moment did you realize that you needed to fight to get your baby girl back? I was in the infirmary after I had her. The infirmary is the like hospital wing in prison. After she was born, they took me back to prison. I was in the infirmary. I stayed there with postpartum depression and severe PTSD for a couple of weeks. And at some point I just snapped out of it and I said, you need to get out of this bed. You need to get your daughter back. You need to take classes, do whatever you can. Laying in this bed is not going to help the situation. So it was in that moment that I realized I needed to start fighting because this is my flesh and blood and I need to get up out of this bed and be strong for her. A lot of people ask me about my food cravings. Did you have food cravings and were they hard to not think about? That's so funny. I actually didn't really have food cravings when I was pregnant with Micah, and the reason being is because I was an inmate. Yes, I was pregnant, but I was an inmate first. And my day-to-day life was surrounded with so much negativity and chaos, and I had to protect her. So cravings were like the last thing on my mind. I was definitely hungry all of the time, but I don't really remember specific cravings during that time. How long did it take you to recover from that trauma? Love you, hope you're doing well. Honestly, years. I still think back to those moments and it's so dark for me. I wasn't really fully healed, honestly, until I was able to experience pregnancy outside of that situation. And having Riley really brought our whole family together, and Micah got a sister that day, and I was able to experience what it is really like to have a baby because I had only ever had a baby in prison. So even my whole pregnancy with Riley, our second daughter, I was so terrified. I had a lot of stress. I didn't even want to have a baby shower. So REECE's sister had to convince us to have a baby shower, which I'm so grateful for, but I was so scared because of past trauma that I was not willing to do all like the normal baby stuff, you know what I mean? But to answer that simply, it took me years to recover. Were any of the women more respectful to you because you were pregnant? Yes and no. I definitely had people that didn't like me because you either love me or you hate me. There's no gray area with me for whatever reason. So I definitely had people that didn't like me. But I also had people that were there for me and encouraged me and supported me and defended me and protected me. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. What did you do if you ended up sleeping in a position that was dangerous for the baby? Okay, so I had no knowledge of what was safe and what was not safe. I didn't have a book like what to expect when you're expecting. I had to go from wives' tales, honestly, from other women or something that they had experienced. I didn't have a doctor telling me what was safe and what was not safe. I just knew, don't get in any fights. Try to lay low, try to stay back, try not to piss anybody off because you're pregnant. So I tried to protect her the best that I could, but as far as sleeping, I had one mat. I was treated the same as everyone else. I didn't have an extra mat. I wasn't given extra things to help me or the baby. I wasn't even given knowledge of how to sleep. I didn't have any idea. I slept how it was comfortable for me to sleep, which is on my side. Did you get time off of work duty to recover? What would happen if you just didn't go? My last 3 months in pregnancy when I was in prison, I didn't have a job. I think they wanted me to fold laundry in the barracks or whatever, but I was also with other pregnant women. So I didn't actually work my last 3 months pregnant, and I didn't work in county jail because I was never allowed to be a trustee ever in my life. Ever, not one time. When your charges are serious, they don't allow you to be a trustee in a county jail. So I didn't work for 9 months. And after 6 weeks, I applied to be reclassified to have a job. So in order to have a prison job, you have to be classified and selected for the job or what have you. So I reapplied for classification to get out of the barracks to do something. And I was put in laundry because for some reason when prisons are like, oh, you've done laundry other times, and I'm like, yeah, I've done laundry every time I've been in prison, and they're like, okay, you can do laundry. So yeah, I did laundry. I've worked in laundry and I've worked in kitchen. I was never given any other jobs than that. Laundry is miserable. I stood on my feet for 12 hours, barely got water breaks. It's hot, it's sweaty, I mean, being in laundry is miserable. But I just wanted to get out of the barracks. Do you think you could have pressed charges for them mistreating you and not letting you walk around after you gave birth? Yes. Just to clarify for those of you that do not know, after my daughter was born, I was not allowed to get out of the bed. I couldn't walk around to heal. Doctors ordered me to get up and walk around, and that was denied by each correctional officer that came in to sit with me. They would not allow me to get out of that bed. I was chained to the bed for 2 days, and that made my recovery even harder. So yes, I believe that I could have done something, but the reality of it is the baby was healthy and I recovered, and that was the furthest thing from my mind, if I'm being honest. Yes, I knew that I was being mistreated and they were going against the doctor's orders, but at the end of the day, I just need to get her back. I was angry. I was absolutely angry with the way that they treated me and my care, but what could I do? I mean, when you're in prison, you don't have control over those things. You don't have the power to stand up for yourself, really, and it's a very difficult time. So suing them was the furthest thing from my mind. I was just happy that my baby was born healthy and she was okay. Did anyone bully you for being pregnant, inmates or COs? No, but I got the look from COs a lot, like, oh, that's the pregnant girl, like that look a lot, but they didn't talk shit to me because I was pregnant. They talked shit for other reasons, but not because I was pregnant. Not that I remember anyway. I desperately tried to stay away from correctional officers as much as possible, so I don't remember them specifically talking shit to me or bullying me because I was pregnant. Did you have postpartum depression? So bad that I couldn't even get out of bed for 2 weeks. I had postpartum depression with both of my children, and I want to say here that if you go through that, you are not alone. We need to talk more about that because it's a very real and very serious thing. I think we always have these ideas, or I did personally, of like having a baby and it's bliss and magic, and like I didn't even know how to change a diaper, man. Like I had to learn as I go. I wasn't a very naturally maternal person, but I had to figure it out. And what's cool is like after you have the baby, that kind of just kicks in a little bit, but still there was a million things I didn't know and I had to ask questions and all of that. So postpartum depression is real, you're not alone, and I went through it with both of my children. Who took the picture of you and newborn Micah? Could you keep that picture or did you find it later? A caseworker came in and took our picture, probably for a file or something, but she did give me a copy of those pictures and I was able to take them back to the prison. Did they give you pads for post-birth bleeding? So the hospital sent me home with like a kit of like those kind of crazy underwear that come up super high and some extra pads. I was allowed to keep those. However, they also gave me like the squirt bottle-y thing for cleaning that area. The prison took that. So the prison went through all the stuff the hospital gave me and allowed me to keep certain things and not other things. I was given the pads that the hospital sent me home with and the special underwear, but other than that, I was not allowed to have anything. And then I believe I was given a prescription for infection. I think the prison gave me that, if I'm remembering correctly, but you have to understand, like the first 2 weeks of my daughter's life when we were separated, I don't remember everything that happened in those 2 weeks. I had like flashes of correctional officers or nurses trying to talk to me during that time, but I don't specifically remember every single thing, and that's just from trauma. But if I remember correctly, I want to say that they did give me a pill for infection, but in the hospital, the doctor tried to give me Percocet and I denied that request and said I need ibuprofen and strong coffee because I was afraid the Percocet would put me to sleep. Even though I was in tremendous amount of pain, I didn't want to be put to sleep. I wanted to spend every second staring at that baby. I can sleep when I get back to prison. Right now, I need to stare at this baby. Did you enjoy hospital food over prison food? How was the experience, or did you order? They just brought me food. I don't remember ordering, but I also remember not being able to eat it because I didn't know how to like hold this baby and eat at the same time. So I just didn't eat, which was so unhealthy and not good for my body at all. But I didn't know how. And then I was afraid to drink liquids because the correctional officer wouldn't let me get up to go to the bathroom. She would let me, but she gave me shit every time. Like she was super annoyed with my request to go to the bathroom because she had to unhook my leg chains and let me go. So I just stopped. I didn't want to ask. You know, I waited till the very last possible second, like I'm about to pee my pants before I asked the guards because they were so crappy to me in the hospital. How long did you get to hold her? Because usually it's not long. Usually it's 24 hours. The doctor granted me an extra 24 hours, so I was able to hold Micah in the hospital for 48 hours. What was the hardest part of having a baby in prison? All of it was, I was terrified every second I was there. Even before I got to the hospital, when I started to go into labor, I was scared. So the whole experience was hard. How long were you in labor? What stage did they take you to the hospital? I was 5 centimeters dilated when I got to the hospital. I went into labor at 4:30 in the morning. They didn't take me to the hospital for 4 or 5 hours, because they had to wait till shift change and count. And then finally they called an ambulance, but I was left in the infirmary in a wheelchair by myself, no one checking me, bleeding. They just kept walking past me. No one cared, and they messed up count because I wasn't in the dorm and I was in the infirmary, and one correctional officer didn't communicate that with the other, so the count kept getting wrong, and like it was a freaking nightmare. I had to sit there for 4 or 5 hours before they actually took me to the hospital, bleeding, in tremendous pain, and terrified. Were you handcuffed to the bed while you were holding your baby? I was shackled to the bed. My feet were chained. So I'm holding this beautiful baby, the only person in the whole world I have ever loved in my life. And I look down and I see shackles and chains on my legs. And that was so difficult for me. I will never get that picture out of my head. And in that moment, I thought, what did you do to get here? Like, I judged myself. I put myself down. I shamed myself for so long because of that. And I'm very proud to say that I now have full custody of my daughter, and we are very okay, and she's perfect, and I fought to be her mom. But that image I held in my brain and in my heart for a very long time. I still see it crystal clear to this day, and it was gut-wrenching. Is having an epidural a choice for an inmate? So the 2 correctional officers that went with me to the hospital when I was in labor and about to give birth were the kindest officers I have ever met. One of the officers came from the male side. I had never met him before, but I had kind of seen him in the halls. And the female officer, it was a male and a female officer, the female officer had just had a grandbaby, and she was always very nice to inmates. She was firm but fair, and she was so kind to me. However, their shift ended and other officers came in. But those 2 officers were so nice to me. The nurses came in and asked if I wanted an epidural, and I was able to get an epidural. For whatever reason, the epidural didn't take correctly. I was still feeling things on one side and not the other. I didn't know when to push. The whole experience was just kind of a train wreck, but I did get an epidural. And days after I had Micah, I was walking with a limp because I felt everything on one side and not the other, and it was just an extreme amount of pain. Fast forward years later when we have Riley, the epidural was perfect. I listened to my body told me when to push. It was such a beautiful experience. It was so pain-free and just the complete opposite of what I went through with Micah. So I'm so grateful that we were able to have Riley. We have tried to have a 3rd child for a long time now, 3 years, it's going on 4 years, and it's not happening for our family, but I'm grateful to have the experience that I had and the babies that we do have. So yeah, I was able to get an epidural. How did you do it? Like, seriously, just thinking about your story gives me PTSD. You don't know how strong you are until strong is the only option you have. I didn't have a choice. All I could be was strong. That was the only option I was given. I had to have a baby, and that kind of leads me to another question. Were you able to get an abortion, or was there a lot of questions about abortions came up? So let me make sure I put this in here. You are not given the option to have an abortion. The jail is just hoping that you leave their facility before you give birth. That was never an option for me. You don't get a choice. You're an inmate. You have to do what they say. And that was never a choice for me. A lot of people were like, why'd you choose to have this baby in jail? Like, what was your thought process? There was no choice. A lot of the facilities that I have been to don't even want to provide tampons. You think they're going to provide an abortion? Even if I had the money and my own doctor to do that procedure, they would not allow it. You don't get a choice. I'm so grateful that I have Micah. That little girl saved my life, and I don't say that lightly. That girl is everything. She is the reason you know my name. She's the reason you're watching this video. She is the reason that I am sober. She made me want to live. There were so many instances where I overdosed or almost took my own life. That child saved my life. I can't even say that enough. She's the reason I'm alive today. Trying not to cry. That little girl is everything, and I'm so grateful for her. But I did want to answer that question because a lot of women asked me that, like, what was your thought process? Like, do you get a choice? You don't get a choice as an inmate. Ever, period. You can pick what kind of soups you want to buy on commissary. You don't get medical procedure choices or options, or you can't even pay your own doctor on the outside. It's a mess. Not just women, but men are neglected too, and people are dying because of such negligence. I could tell you story after story after story of women giving birth alone in dirty jail cells, women being denied medication and dying. I just watched a video of a woman who lost her ability to walk because the officers did not give her medication, and she was ignored for like 48 hours, and by the time I took her to the hospital, she died. Like, this happens every single day in our country. Nurses in prison and correctional officers in jails and prisons are ignoring inmates to the point of them dying. I've seen it happen with my own 2 eyes. We need prison reform so desperately in this country, and I want to stay on topic, but I also want to put in here that people are dying at the hands of correctional officers because of negligence or extreme abuse, and that needs to change. Did you get better food to better supplement baby? No, I did not. I got a cold bologna sandwich at the end of the day that was so hard and disgusting and it was impossible to eat, but they gave me an orange and a little carton of milk, and that I ate every day. So I was super grateful for that. Did the prison provide aftercare products when you get back from the hospital? No, I got the same stuff as everyone else, plus the pads and the underwear that the hospital gave me that the prison allowed me to have. Do you get to keep ultrasound pictures? I had an ultrasound done in the county jail and the correctional officer was like, Kent, I gotta take that picture from you, you can't have it. And I said, try to take this from me. She saw in my eyes how serious I was and she luckily was like, don't tell anyone, I let you keep it. And I'm like, thank you. That officer no longer works at that facility. She did end up quitting. She just couldn't handle the environment, but she was a really nice officer and I'm so lucky that she was on shift when I got my ultrasound pictures. So I was able to keep it, but that goes against policy. Did I have prenatal vitamins? I did not have prenatal vitamins until I was 3 months pregnant and I had to beg. The nurse finally brought in her own prenatal vitamins and let me have them from the cart. But 3 months it took me to fight. In New York, if I was pregnant there, they would have given me a prenatal vitamin in intake and I would have been able to keep my baby for 18 months. My friend Jen talks about her experience on YouTube and I'll link that video down below. How did you know the sex? I had an ultrasound, but I knew it was a girl. All right, you guys, I'm gonna end today's video here. Thank you so much for every single person that reached out to me. If I didn't answer your question, leave them in the comment section down below and maybe we can do a part 2. As always, I love you guys. Stay safe, stay sober, whatever that looks like to you. And I will see you in my next one.